The G1000 is a reliable system, but as all things mechanical or electronic, failures are possible. Let's investigate some potential emergencies.
So what if at some point during your flight you experience a charging system failure? The alternator or alternators keep the batteries charged and provide electrical current to all electrical components. If the charging system fails, the only source of power is the electrical energy stored in the main battery and the standby battery. Since it's not possible to know exactly how long these batteries will continue to supply electrical current, it's imperative to recognize this condition as soon as possible and respond to it correctly. Therefore, it is especially important to keep the electrical portion of the engine instruments as part of your scan. Electrical information is located at the bottom left corner of the MFD. Occasionally, check the amps. It usually indicates slightly positive in a healthy system. If it is showing a minus indication, it will appear in amber. The aircraft is using electrical power from the main battery, not the alternator. A low voltage, a value at or below 24.5 volts, could also indicate alternator failure. In this case, the low volts annunciator will come on and the voltage readout will be in red. As a practical note, if an electrical emergency occurs, you might want to consider turning off the main battery and running it first on the backup battery. The standby battery has a useful life of about 30 minutes if it is not being recharged by the alternator. The life of the main battery will vary based upon the electrical load. The standby battery is on the essential bus. That means it handles what its name implies, the essentials. These are the PFD, primary flight sensors, engine monitoring, and a single NavCom GPS unit. If you look at your circuit breaker panel, you will see these items listed. It's a quick reminder of what is available on the essential bus. By choosing the backup battery, you will not have the MFD, lights, flaps, transponder, and other non-essential electrical items. In an electrical emergency, it may be to your advantage to use the standby battery alone for just under 30 minutes first, and then use the main battery toward the end of your flight. This would give you all the electrical equipment for your approach and landing. Use caution with flaps on landing, as they may not be retractable if the landing approach is unsuccessful. As with any electrical emergency, don't try to extend the flight any longer than absolutely necessary. If you are in IMC, you certainly don't want to lose all of the G1000's capabilities by trying to extend the flight to a distant destination. This would be foolish. Divert to an appropriate alternate when practical. What can you do if you suspect alternator failure? Try to reset the alternator. Refer to your airplane's pilot operating handbook. It's POH. For Cessna installations, you would turn off the alt side of the master switch. Check that the circuit breaker marked alt field is in and not popped out. If it is in, turn the alt side of the master switch back on again to try to reset the alternator. If this doesn't work, turn off the alternator and all non-essential electrical equipment. Turn off the Bus 1 avionics switch. Select COM1 and NAV1 on the audio panel, and tune the active frequencies here before turning off Avionics Bus 2. In the clouds, it may be best to turn Avionics Bus 2 back on before flying an instrument approach. Assuming that the main battery has sufficient power, this will return several supplemental tools for the approach. Important items on Avionics Bus 1 will already be powered through the essential bus. Having done these things, land as soon as practicable. Be aware that a low voltage indication can also occur when the engine is operating at a low RPM. If this happens, add power and the low volt indication should go out. If not, have maintenance personnel check the aircraft. It's also possible that the alternator circuit breaker, alt field, may pop out during an engine start due to an overvoltage situation. Reset it. If it stays in and the voltages and amps are reading correctly, consider it a nuisance occurrence. If it pops out again, have maintenance personnel check the aircraft. It is possible to experience a situation in which the alternator produces too much voltage. This is called a runaway alternator. You want to react in essentially the same way as you did for an alternator out situation. Possibly one or both of your LCDs could fail. It's most likely that only one would fail at a time. In an actual PFD failure, the G1000 should automatically go into reversionary mode. If it doesn't, push the red display backup button. In reversionary mode, the PFD information will appear on the MFD along with your engine readouts. In an MFD failure, the G1000 should automatically go into reversionary mode too. If it doesn't, push the red display backup button. In reversionary mode, your critical flight instrumentation is combined with engine instrumentation on the PFD. This condition somewhat diminishes your navigation capability, but the small inset map is still available. Continue to fly the airplane using the information on the working screen. What if you experience an autopilot failure? Try to reset the system by resetting the circuit breaker. If that doesn't work, try to turn the autopilot off and then on. In the case of a problem servo in the autopilot, make sure you know how to disengage the autopilot. Depending on the type, there are various ways to do this. Check your operating manual for specifics. If a red X appears on the airspeed tape, altitude tape, attitude indicator, or HSI, what should you do? This could indicate a possible failure of either the air data computer or the AHRS system. In all 4 cases, you will perform the same checks to try to rectify the situation. Make sure the circuit breakers marked ADC/AHRS, ESS bus, and AVN bus are in. If any are open or popped out, reset them if cool. If they trip again, don't try to reset them. Use the appropriate standby instrument in place of the failed G1000 indicator. If the low vacuum annunciator comes on, check that the vacuum pressure is in the green. Don't use the standby attitude indicator if the vacuum pointer is out of the green or if the gyro flag is showing on the standby attitude indicator.